Hello, this is Robert Rickover. I'm an Alexander Technique teacher in Omaha, Nebraska. I also teach in Toronto. And my guest today is Imogen Ragone, who is an Alexander Technique teacher in Wilmington, Delaware. And we both teach online, primarily, for
Yeah.
me, exclusively these days.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk today about an article that appeared in the New York Times about 2 weeks ago. And it's titled, Fitness May Beat Thinness. By fitness, it's kind of they're using fitness as a proxy for activity, movement, exercise, that kind of
Exercise.
thing.
Mhm.
And I'll just read, I want to read a tiny bit of this. It's an article about a study that which analyzed the results of hundreds of previous studies about weight loss and workouts in men and women, and found that obese people typically lower their risks of heart attack and premature death far more by gaining fitness than by dropping weight or dieting. And basically, they suggest that if you're a bit overweight and you're concerned about your health and longevity, the way to go is to up your activity level and to not make your goal losing weight per se. That dieting on its own has a very poor track record.
It
And
seemed from what I read is either just a very small percentage of people who benefited from dieting alone, and some studies it was like there was no difference health-wise at all.
exactly.
But exercise, activity, movement seemed
Right.
really helpful.
And it
What
does, yeah,
struck me,
yeah,
one thing that struck me was that um, an overweight person who's active is more likely to be healthy than a slim person who is inactive.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, and really, there are many, many studies that confirm this. In this article, there's nothing really new in this article, except that it has pulled together tons of research, and it all points in the same direction. That I'll just quote here again, if you're thinking about whether if you're thinking about whether you should diet or do more exercise, they say the contest is not even close. Compared head to head, the magnitude of benefit was far greater from improving fitness than from losing weight. And again, by fitness, they're using it as a kind of a proxy for activity. So given that, we're both Alexander Technique teachers, and what are the implications for that study for people who teach and are considering taking lessons in the Alexander Technique? And I suppose I should probably give a brief definition of what the Alexander Technique is. And I would say it's a way of learning how to move with greater ease, less strain, uh, as we go about life on the surface of this planet, where there are certain forces that operate on us, how to make the best use of those forces, the external forces, and how to organize our bodies to do that. That's a definition. So I read the article and I thought, well, if the thing for people to do is start moving, and if some of those people have been pretty sedentary for years, and if they are overweight, doing activity they're going to have to go slow probably to increase it. And the evidence is pretty clear that even if you just up your game a little bit and walk around the block a few times, that's going to make a big difference. But if they're going to start engaging in activity, from our point of view, it would be good if that activity was done in as effective way as possible, with as little chance for injury as possible. And that is exactly what the Alexander technique teaches people. So that's the main thing I'd like to say. Would you like to elaborate on that a little bit? I have a couple of other things I want to add, but the big point I'm making, if you're in this position of trying to decide what to do, and you decide reasonably to go for more exercise, maybe you should think about the quality of your movements in that, and not just go for quantity. Go for quality.
I think the how you are doing the movements, the how you are using, coordinating, organizing yourself, mind and body, as you do whatever the activity it is, from simply walking to any exercise or movement there is, basically.
Right.
If you can learn to do that in a more efficient, you might say more natural way, a way that's more compatible with how our bodies are designed to move, that's going to put less stress and strain on you and less likely for injury. So there's the benefits of the fitness, and you want to minimize the risks of injury, right? So that you can not have setbacks and be able to continue with the benefits of the activities.
Right.
Anyway, there's some thoughts off the top of my head. So,
and you'd probably, especially if you haven't been doing much activity, you probably want to be able to do that activity in as easy and comfortable way as possible.
Yeah.
Or you're going to get discouraged really quickly.
One thing that just occurred to me is I think this applies to all of us. If we think we've got to do something that's strenuous and is going to use more effort than we're used to, we put even more effort into that. And by effort, that's like excess tension in our body, more tension and strain than is needed, actually, often for the activity itself. And especially if you've not been very active, if you can lower that possibility and reduce that extra effort, one, it'll be easier and pleasanter and more comfortable for you to do the activities, but I think there'll be more longevity and it's more gentle and gradual for your body to adjust. I think there'll be all sorts of benefits.
Right. Now, these kind of studies don't really think in those terms.
Right.
But I think it's true that excess effort that you're talking about that part of the exercising, I think, probably doesn't lead to greater health and longevity. I think the part
so maybe we can clarify what we mean. So for instance, if I'm walking, the act of walking, that movement is what's going to give me what I understand was what's giving me the benefit. But if I'm tensing my neck and I'm doing that's putting strain on me.
Right.
So
and I don't think that helps your health or longevity, but the walking part for sure does. And I think this study of studies, so to speak, really brings that out. But there's one other thing that I'd like to add. yes, exercise is definitely the main thing you should be thinking about. But I think another benefit of the Alexander technique, and this is perhaps a bit more indirect, is it will affect your eating. Eating is an activity. You're moving your jaw around, you're chewing on food, you're bringing food up to your mouth. And one thing about the Alexander technique is it starts to make you pretty mindful of how you do things. And in the field of dieting, I don't know whether this is still a big thing, but a few years ago, at least, and maybe it's still true, there was something called mindful eating.
Mhm.
If you eat mindfully, you're probably going to eat, you're not going to keep pushing food in without giving it a chance to get chewed up. You'll be more aware of what you're eating. And I think overall, you're probably likely to eat, eat in a better way and maybe become sensitive to the effects of too much sugar, too many carbs on yourself. So I think even on the dieting end of things, or even if you don't diet per se, it's quite likely that your eating habits may improve too with Alexander lessons. It's a more indirect thing,
Yeah,
but
I
I
mean,
don't think it's negligible.
no, yeah, you can apply Alexander technique to anything in life. So whatever you choose to bring it to, whether it's running, walking, exercising at the gym, swimming, or eating, or working at your computer, or
Anything.
anything.
Yeah.
I had another thought
Mhm.
or question actually, is I'm wondering if using the, because we can use the Alexander technique to for more sedentary pursuits too, right?
Sure.
Sitting
Yeah.
here talking to you, I am using the Alexander technique.
Right.
But I'm not I mean, I'm moving my hands a little bit, but I'm just wonder, because I'm not sitting in a collapse in that sort of sedentary way,
Hmm.
if there's something about being more poised or balanced, or anyway, I can't imagine it makes a huge difference calorie wise, but I would think this also has health benefits, that we're not
Breathing
squashing out.
wise, for
Yeah, yeah.
example. Yeah. So
Mhm.
sure, even if you do say, okay, I'm going to start exercising more, but I still got to spend time at the computer. I want to read, I want to watch TV, whatever. Those activities are going to be, you're going to be doing them in a more effective way, a way that doesn't put extra strain on your body. And so you get some health benefits from that as well. So it's kind of
Win, win, win.
win, win, win. Yeah, I mean, so that's really I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to say about the Alexander implications of this kind of study? Because I've kind of said
I,
all I can think of.
yeah, I mean, that's just what occurred to me. And it absolutely, in terms of what the study is saying and being active, um, as the primary thing, Alexander absolutely can help you do that in a way that's going to help you feel better, enjoy it more, be more comfortable, less prone to injury, and it can filter into all other ways that are more indirectly helping your health
Right. And
and
I think
fitness
that
too.
enjoyment factor is a really important one, because if you're miserable doing this increased exercise that seems like a good thing for you, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to keep going with it too much. But if it starts to become fun and enjoyable, um,
Yeah.
more likely you'll
Uh,
do it.
And one other thing did actually just occur to me, is that the the mindfulness aspect of the Alexander technique in the approach might help with the importance of building up gradually too, because it's very easy for us to like, okay, all right, I'm going to do this for an hour every day or whatever the thing is. And that's, that's so tempting.
Right, right.
But
That's a good point.
So that it can help us kind of be more with the process and maybe more able to accept doing a more gradual, thoughtful approach to
Yeah,
building up.
you don't want to start doing a marathon running activity if you've been sedentary for. I think you're absolutely right. I think you'll be much better able to gauge how much you should increase the level of activity. And I think I'm not a exercise or dieting expert, but I think most people in that field would advise you to go slow, to start slow and gradually build up. And I think if you're taking Alexander lessons, that'll be really clear to you just from learning what you learn with lessons. So maybe this is a good point to end our conversation. I really recommend this article. I'm going to put a link to it by the interview. The author is Gretchen Reynolds. She writes regularly for the New York Times, and the title is "Fitness May Beat Thinness." So
that's really interesting, Robert, because the title I had on the same article was "Why Exercise is More Important Than Weight Loss for a Longer Life."
Yeah, sometimes the online version, they
have a title for their online post that's different from the article itself.
That's probably the relevant title, because that's what people are going to find. It's only people like me who actually read the physical paper who see that. Well, I think that's a good place to end our conversation. My guest today has been Imogen Ragone, an Alexander Technique teacher in Wilmington, Delaware. And Imogen, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Really interesting conversation.